Hey guys, so an update here on the disc brake conversion on the Fox. Initially I started out with GT brakes and it seemed like a good idea. Got the calipers painted, the bracket, and then I decided to switch to 03 Cobra brakes. And every time I do an upgrade to an upgrade, it always comes back to bite me. And so here's what I'm running into. The caliper bracket, the width in here is not quite wide enough. I mean, it gets over this rotor, but it's so tight there's absolutely no room for any kind of movement or heat expansion. And I was struggling with that, trying to figure out how that's going to work, because I thought these were the same between the Cobra and the GT, but turns out they're not. If you take a look, the Cobra disc is vented and it's a lot wider by comparison. Here's a GT disc. You can see it's just a solid one piece and it's not as thick. So luckily I have an assortment of calipers and parts laying here, including some Cobra units that I had the opportunity to take a look at. And here's a Cobra one right here, and I can see it has a much larger gap. There's a huge amount of play, and when I put these down and I mic'd them, I found it was about 50 thousandths bigger, which doesn't sound like much, but it makes a world of difference in how it fits around this rotor and how I can get it to work for that matter. So it looks like I'm back to square one. I'm gonna have to strip these down. I got some parts that are seized in here, so hopefully I can rescue these and fix them, because the auto parts stores are completely out of the Cobra versions. So I'd have to hit the junkyard or who knows what, try and find something online. That's just going to delay things. These unfortunately are worthless, as pretty as they are. I could maybe steal the pins out of them. Okay, a little update on these brackets. They have turned into quite the nightmare. I had one seized on both bracket that was incredibly corroded and rusted. You could see how damaged the end is there even. That only had one flat side initially. I struggled and battled. I fought this one for about 30 minutes and I got it out. Not so lucky on the other one. It ended up shearing completely off. So now it's just stuck in there. You can see I started to drill a hole there. I'm going to keep working at that. And what my intent is, I cut a piece of pipe here. I'm going to pop that on over there. And I'm going to thread this rod down in there. So it'll be like that. And essentially try and make a little puller and see if I can back that out. Well, that's just fantastic. I'm wondering if this pin is hardened. It's been a heck of a time trying to get it tapped, and now the tap just snapped right off. Alright, plan B. Success. Alright, I was digging through one of the toolboxes and I found a brand new 1/4 inch by 20 tap. Let's go give it a shot and see what happens. Alright, I think we have this tapped down about as far as we're going to be able to go. It feels like it's starting to bottom out. Now we can move on to try and pull this out. Alright, we're finally at the point where we have a drilled and tapped thread. This goes in and threads all the way down just fine. So here's my idea. Got a nut on there, a couple washers up there, piece of pipe that I cut. Pipe's going to sit over there. We're going to thread this rod down as far as it'll go. Now the theory is keep pushing this nut down, pull that slug out. A little anti-seize here. Okay, new idea. Cut a shorter piece of pipe so we can move down on the threads. That one's stripped and damaged over there from earlier. And the new concept is going to be to use 2 nuts and turn them together, effectively doubling the surface area of threads that we're catching. Let's see if we can make some progress before it strips this time. Nope. Now we reach the limits of the bolt itself. Well, what was that? Plan B? Plan C. Okay, we've drilled the hole out for a 5/16 tap this time. So I got a thicker 5/16 threaded rod. I managed to find a coupling nut, so get a nice deep amount of engagement of threads, so we likely won't strip those out. I wish I could have found this in grade 8, but nothing local I could find this long threaded all the way. So we'll make do with this. That hole was drilled and tapped so close to the edge, I can't believe it made it. Really glad it did. It's borderline going into the bracket there. It's getting really tight. You can see those washers compressing real bad. Something has to be giving. Well, now I know what it is. Wow, we snapped the 5/16. It doesn't look like we moved it at all. That pin hasn't budged. And I can't go any thicker because we'll go through the sidewall. So we need to figure out something else. A better plan. Got some grade 8 hardware. It's not as long as I wanted on that one, but I'm going to try something different here. Oh, yes. Unbelievable. It's finally out. Wow. Looking over this pin after it came out of the bracket and inspecting it, it's really not as corroded as you would think. I guess just being such a tight fit and the amount of friction that it causes from corrosion and the amount of surface area there makes it practically impossible to get out. I did see, as I was afraid of, I did drill ever so slightly through it. It just barely broke the surface. I inspected the bracket with after cleaning it up a little with a magnifying glass and a bright light, and I don't see any damage in there, so the bracket is good to go. Those pins were a nightmare. They're finally out of the brackets and they're being reassembled. The next episode we're going to finish completing the rear brakes, get them painted, all set up, and we'll also go over all of the little nuances and differences between the GT and the Cobra brakes and cover all those little tech tips. See you next time. They're finally out of the brackets and the caliper. In the next episode we're going to